I used to think that Ouija boards were a load of crap. I still think so, more or less. In fact, I don't know what I think about them anymore. I always saw them as a party game for naive people. So when my friend Joe told me he had one, I just laughed. I'd only known Joe for a year or so, through mutual friends. He lived in a small apartment with his girlfriend Lisa and their dog Vincent. I was only 18 at the time. Joe was about 23 and Lisa was 20. For a while, I used to go to their house every weekend after work. Then one evening we were going out and Joe started talking about some strange encounters he'd had in his childhood and how he'd attracted spirits all his life, or something like that. I smiled and nodded to be polite, while he drifted off into paranormal topics and talked about shadow people following him. He then went into his room and took out a Ouija board, but not the kind you buy in a store, made by a toy company. It was made of real wood and sculpted by hand. It was really beautiful. He said he had gotten it as a birthday present from his parents years ago because he was obsessed with the paranormal. I didn't ask where or who made it, but it looked handmade. While I sat there laughing and joking about it, Lisa chimes in and says, "Joe, tell him about the other night." Joe proceeds to tell me how him and Lisa allegedly spoke to a demon using it, and the demon claimed his name was Beelzebub, a demon in hell. Me being a big metalhead at the time, he got my attention. "Let's do it. Let's try to talk to this demon," I said, half joking. Joe asked if I was sure I wanted to try it, and I agreed. So we went into his room. We turned off all the lights in the apartment. Lisa lit candles all over the living room and we sat on the floor. I was nervous, but I was having fun watching Lisa and Joe's parade. It was scary. I looked at Joe and he seemed unsettled. I asked him what was wrong and he said he wasn't feeling well, that he didn't like the open doors that showed the darker areas of the apartment. He and I got up and closed every door in the place, every room and every cupboard door. We sat down on the floor and Vincent, the pup, laid on the bed, and we began. We tried several times to ask if there were any spirits with us. Nothing. For about 20 minutes, nothing. Then I told Joe that I wanted to ask for someone in particular. "Is John Smith here with us? Can John Smith talk to me?" John Smith was the name of a best friend's father who died in a car accident on his way home from a fishing trip. Then he moved, and it was crazy. It felt like a great force had come to life in the drawing board, as if it had a will of its own. None of that sliding around the board crap you see in movies. It felt like we were holding the hand of a person who was tugging and pulling. It was a strong but articulate movement, and he spelled out Hello. I asked him if he was John, and the answer was yes. I asked him to prove it, and he spelled out my best friend's name. I asked him where he was when he died, and he spelled Lake. I felt shivers run down my spine. What I thought was going to be fun turned out to be exciting and scary. Joe and Lisa knew nothing about John Smith. I'd never mentioned him or said anything about the circumstances to them, so they couldn't have known. I started to get very uneasy. I told Joe and Lisa that I didn't want to talk to John anymore, so they told me to push the clipboard to goodbye or whatever. After that, I called it a night, but I wanted more. The next night, I was back. Same routine. Joe and Lisa prepared the room. Joe closed all the doors. Vincent in bed. Lisa said she wanted to talk to her grandma. So we did the process. The incident was the same for her as it was for me. The memory's a bit fuzzy, but she spelled out, "I love you," and also spelled out some kind of inside joke that she used to share with her grandma. Lisa was in tears. As in my case, I had no information about her grandma, and Joe wasn't so cruel to make her cry as a joke. I felt powerful. I think we all did. I felt like I was finally believing that we had a real way of talking to spirits, the possibilities. But then it happened. After the incident with Lisa's grandma, we were all in shock. Joe was comforting Lisa, and I was speechless. We regained our composure and got back to it. This time we asked the normal question, "Are there any spirits with us?" What would normally leave the planchette lifeless suddenly kicked in with great force, a frightening force. The planchette moved violently around the board. We all laughed nervously. We asked, "Who are you?" The planchette shot to the moon symbol. If you don't know, this symbol is supposed to mean a dark spirit. We looked at each other and, at the same time, moved the clipboard to the goodbye symbol. As soon as we had done this, Vincent jumped out of bed. He sat in front of the closet door, which was now open. He sat down and stared as if he were looking at someone. We had closed the door before. Joe got up and said, "Fuck this," and ran into the kitchen. Lisa and I followed him. Joe almost had a panic attack. He ran to turn on all the lights. I'd never seen Joe panic like that. We were all pretty scared. We don't know what happened, but we certainly had the door locked. When I was 16, I discovered what Ouija boards were. Curious, I asked my parents if we had one. My mother confirmed that we did, buried in a closet in the basement near the laundry room, a small storage space full of old belongings and board games, meticulously organized. Intrigued by my little superstitions, I convinced her to help me search without messing up things. After searching through the closet, she found an old dusty box labeled Ouija with an image of two hands holding a planchette. The edges of the box were frayed, although Mom insisted that they had only used it a few times. Eager to try it out, I texted my friends to come over that weekend while my parents were out. My friend Liam drove up with Jack and arrived around 9 p.m. My younger brother Adam joined us. We gathered in my loft bedroom, turned off the lights, and pointed a flashlight at the board from the corner. Sitting on one side, we put our hands on the board and started asking questions. Starting with the basics, I asked, "If there's anyone there, move the planchette." It slid to yes. Adam asked, "How old are you?" The clipboard slid from 6 to 7, 67. Although we looked at each other, suspecting that someone was faking it, we kept the mood serious. Finally, I asked, "Are you a demon?" The clipboard changed to yes. We laughed, breaking the tension, until the flashlight abruptly went out. In panic, someone shouted, "Who did this?" But the flashlight remained intact in the corner. I crawled over there, pressing the button several times. It didn't turn on. When I turned on the bedside lamp, I saw everyone's terrified faces. I joked that the timing was bad, but part of me doubted the coincidence. We ran out into the yard, too scared to stay indoors. That night, after everyone had left and Adam had fallen asleep, I returned the Ouija board to the basement, uncomfortable sharing a room with him. Exhausted, I turned off the lights and tried to go to sleep immediately. As I drifted off to sleep, a loud thud came from my closet. I quickly got up, turned on the lamp, and walked over to the closet. Looking at the back of the door, I saw two shadowy silhouettes that looked like feet. I yelled for Adam, who came running in. By the time he arrived, the shadows had vanished. We opened the closet to find my childhood memorabilia box, a sturdy wooden craft project, knocked over, contents spilled. No draft could have toppled it. I slept in my parents' bed that night, then the spare room for a week. Though I eventually returned to my bed, the memory lingered. I've never touched a Ouija board since. During my horror-obsessed phase in October 2015, I became fixated on Ouija boards after reading countless eerie stories online. With Halloween approaching, I ordered one off Amazon, determined to test the supernatural for myself. One evening, while our parents were out, I convinced my younger sister to join me at the dimly lit dining room table. We placed our hands on the planchette, asking questions into the silence. Awkward laughter filled the room as I deliberately moved the piece to spook her, but she saw through the act. Boredom soon set in, and my sister retreated to her room. Undeterred, I spent hours researching why our session failed, stumbling on accounts of dud first attempts. Around 1 a.m., long after my sister had fallen asleep, I crept back downstairs. I dimmed the lights again, whispering questions to the board, my hands trembling on the planchette. Nothing moved. Then the noises began. Soft footsteps echoed from upstairs, followed by a muffled woman's voice, distinctly not my sister's, emanating from my older brother's empty bedroom. Heart racing, I climbed the stairs, pressing my ear to his door. The voice grew clearer. "Grandma's here, Georgie. Grandma's here, Georgie." It was my late grandmother's voice repeating the phrase in a haunting loop. I flung the door open and flicked on the light. The room was empty. The voice ceased. Terrified, I bolted to my room, locked the door, and curled under the covers, my mind spinning. The voice had been too vivid, too real to dismiss as imagination. I recited frantic prayers until dawn, too shaken to sleep. 8 years later, the memory remains sharp. The creak of footsteps, the spectral voice, and the chilling certainty that something unseen had answered my call.